Experience! Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now. Get yourself a match deposit of up to $100 and hit the time codes for the Underdog Entry of the week that we'll be putting through on this show. And then I'll have an updated one in the newsletter once we have a bit better gauge on how the weather is looking for Thursday. Reminder as well, when the tee times are released on Tuesday afternoon, that signals the opening of the PME Classic on Underdog, so go get your drafts in right now. And best ball season is back. For NFL, the top 40 in Best Ball Mania 5 this year win at least $50,000. So if you're into NFL and you enjoy to draft, use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy and try to get your hands on the $1.5 million top prize. But even if you become like 31st, you're doing pretty well. So I recommend that you go do that now. Joining me for the best bets for the Byron Nelson this week, the CJ Cup Byron Nelson this week. Take a hike, AT&T. CJ Cup, you're in. So every single South Korean player is now obligated to play north of Dallas in McKinney, Texas at TPC Craig Ranch. Sia Nejad David Bieleski, both joining me on the line. David, what time is it where you're at?
It's just gone 1:02 a.m., Pat, so I can wish everybody a very good morning, good evening, and good night everywhere in the world.
Is this how you ended up on Matthew Pavon at Torrey Pines, that you're actually just from the future and you know these things?
I get that a lot in Win Daily Sports in the Discord. I am often accused of owning a DeLorean and traveling back in time every time I hit 88 miles per hour. But it is one of the benefits of living in New Zealand, other than being an absolutely stunning, beautiful country, is that we are in the future. And I can actually just tell you exactly what's going to happen approximately 18 hours from now.
Sia, is that why you have losing golf picks like me? Because we're in the past? We're past people?
Yeah, we're past people. I'm actually sorry I didn't come with last time I was on here, Pat, I had a top Oceania play, but with David on here, I don't have it. I feel a little embarrassed, but I'm so happy to be on with David. David is so incredibly sharp, and he is from the future, and I know that because he does pick some outrights just kind of out of nowhere, and Matthew Pavon was definitely one of them earlier this year.
Well, we're here to talk about the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, maybe a live bet for Live Singapore if you got one, or hell, the Volvo China Open, if it's something that you really want to dip your toe into the water in. The best bets are just the best bets. Whatever the best bets are going to be, where we can win some money, is what we want to do this week. So let's start off with the gold picks. I am going to lead us off, and I bet Kevin Yu to win this tournament at 80-1. He rates out basically the best of any stats that I'm looking at. Dude can't putt to save his life, so that's going to be a problem if it ends up becoming a pure putting contest. But ball striking wise, there's really, outside of like Tom Hoagie and Keith Mitchell, there's really no one in this field who has been as good as him over the past 3 months or so off the tee and with his approaches. So I'm just going to dip my toe into the water with Kevin Yu here. Although I do have the outright, I do think, Dave, the best bet for him is going to be top 20 at plus 333. Bet 100, get $333. I like it.
Yeah, interestingly now with Kevin Yu, I like that. Very bold play. Never played at TPC Craig Ranch before, so that'll be interesting to see how he interprets it. But look, it is a kind of golf course where you do need to go low. Obviously, we're seeing winning totals around minus 25 in most instances. As you mentioned at the top of the show, weather might put pay to that. So that'll be very interesting to see how that goes with the scoring. But yeah, look, the approach play is really, really good for Kevin Yu, and I think that's a really key element for his game at the moment. And with this golf course, that's tended to be one of the better predictors of success. You've got this kind of strange choice of fairways at TPC Craig Ranch. We don't often see that type of grass anywhere, and it can be pretty polarizing for players. It tends to either let the ball sit up, so some players love it and they say it's sort of like playing off the tee, and you can get flyers as well. And so their approach play is really key, especially if you can find some correlating form at some of those sorts of fairways courses.
How do you feel about Kevin Yu this week, Sia? Was he on your radar?
Kind of. I mean, I played him. I had a 6-for-6 lineup at the Zurich that had a real shot at an outright, and CT Pan and Kevin Yu were on that. They had a very disappointing Sunday. I think the two of the teams I was really leaning on last week at the Zurich were those two, and I think it was Norlander and Luke List, and neither of those teams, I think they were like the two worst teams in the field actually on Sunday. I've liked Kevin Yu. I mean, I like him more sort of in the first round leader market and things like that, kind of the 1-day markets, maybe matchups. And that's only because of the putter that you mentioned. I mean, these are guys that I don't know that can get hot for 4 rounds, but I do know that really any golfer can get hot for 1 or 2. But I like the Kevin Yu play, and I certainly like that number, top 20 plus 333. That's a really good number on Kevin Yu. Do I think he's going to be in the top 20? I think he's probably going to slip right outside of it. But again, I like the number enough to probably bet it.
So you would just rather dip your toe into the top 30 market then, as a guaranteed winner, if he's just going to miss out on the top 20?
Well, it's funny you say that because my gold pick is a top 30 play.
Well, let's hear it.
All right. It's a nice professional transition, Pat Mayo. It's Tom Hoge. I mean, it feels like a little chalky because I know a lot of people like Tom Hoge. I wanted to play him in the top 20 market, but for me, just conservatively, I think I want the cushion at minus 110 at top 30 instead of the plus 150 of top 20. And I think everybody probably by this point in the weekend, I know it's only Tuesday, Tom Hoge has probably come across their ears or their eyes. The guy is just really playing well, especially with the putter that we talked about that some of these players lack, but the approach play, the long iron play, it's all so good. Now off the tee leaves a little bit to be desired. You know, the driving distance isn't necessarily there, but he makes up for it with the scoring, with the putting and the approach play. I think top 30, you know, most of my plays on here are usually like plus money plays. I really did want to make this a T20 plus money play, but I think Tom Hoge inside the top 30 is a very, very comfortable kind of cruise type of bet. And I think Tom Hoge is probably good for like a top 15, top 20, but I'll take the T30 at basically close to even money.
David, I was looking into Hoagie, and he's someone that I've been riding for a while now, and he cost me my top 5 at Heritage, although you wouldn't notice it by his T18 finish, but when you take a quintuple bogey on the final hole, it tends to drop you down the leaderboard just a little bit. But his approach play in general is a bit off the mark from where it was about 6 weeks ago, because he had this amazing run to start the year. Basically starting at Pebble Beach, he gained at least basically 4 strokes per tournament on approaches since we left Florida. So you have Houston and you have the RBC Heritage, and obviously they missed the cut last week, him and Mav at the Zurich. But it's been 2 strokes on approach, 0.2 strokes on approach. And it's not like he's getting it done around the greens. It's not like he's getting it done off the tee to really enhance that. His putter has been saving him. The putter is still running really hot. But I do worry about him just a little bit that if the irons aren't as precise as they were, he doesn't really have the rest of the game to make up for it.
Yeah, I do take that point. I would say TPC Craig Ranch, it does kind of take the driver out of hand a little bit. The off the tee doesn't rate that highly for me when it comes to TPC Craig Ranch. It was like if you can either be long or you can be accurate, whichever way you can kind of like ham and egg it, you'll find a way to get the ball in play. But the approach play is really key for me. One thing I'd point out with TPC Craig Ranch is there is a disproportionate number of shots that come from in that over 200 plus yards range. So you expect sort of 5.5 to 6 shots on average to be over 200 plus yards in this field. But Tom Hoge is third in that ranking. So he rates up very, very highly from over 200 plus yards. I mean, pretty much any category over 100 yards, he rates up very highly because we know that what he can do on approach. So I do take your point. It does look like there may have been a little bit of regression in terms of the approach of late. Like he's not gaining his kind of 8 strokes per tournament, which it's kind of seemed to be the way that he's been doing it the entire year so far. But the guy's just been on an absolute tear. I mean, just popping out top 20s left, right, and center at every single event that he's played in. And I do think that this is actually a pretty good course fit for him as well. So as long as there isn't anything too serious in terms of that regression, I do really like that play. I have him on my outright card myself this week.
Yeah, well, I missed out on the good number, I think, on Hoagie. I think he opened at 40, then he got bet down to 35, and the best number I'm seeing, I think, right now is 27 to 1. He does seem to be probably the most popular outright bet this week, which is never really a good thing, Sia. You never want to get on the chalk outright guy. How often does that hit per year, do you think? Once? Maybe twice?
I'm currently looking up Tom Hoage's outright because I think there's a 33 to 1 still in the market at some bigger books. But
where at?
To answer your question, I think it's BetMGM. That's what it was last night. So I'm actually just double checking that the number hasn't moved. And as I scroll, it has not moved. It's still plus 3,300 at BetMGM. So just an FYI there. You're right. I mean, listen, it's okay to play chalky guys when it's the outright market. It's DFS that we have to worry about that.
It is. I'm just saying that just by and large. I mean, we already got Akshay. Everyone hit Akshay at Valero. I mean, how many community wins can you have in 1 year, Dave? Like I said, 1 or 2, maybe. We got Fowler last year at Rocket Mortgage. That was one. And then I can't remember another one.
Yeah, I mean, fading the chalk in DFS is always a good play, but it seems to go that way in betting a little bit as well. And yeah, sometimes it is better to take that route. I do take your point, but look, I do like Tom Hoagie this week. I think it's a really good course fit for him. I think the approach play is really key, and it's not the strongest field. Let's be honest, it really isn't. And that plus 3,300 number is really good. And if you're at some of the international books, you've got access to William Hill. You can get 8 places with that as well, and I think that's really good value. That could be an interesting way to take on Tom Hoagie this week.
Do you do many of the 8 placement points on bets from lower in the board? Because Jeff and I always discuss this. He just never plays placements. I usually have a threshold of 50, 60 to 1. I've even been giving up on that recently. Just, why double my money if I'm going to hit an outright that I'd rather, not tread water so much, try to week that really capitalize when it comes through. And then I'm just not betting as much every single week as well. Do you generally do the 8 placement points on each of your bets?
Yeah, basically. I mean, when you've got placement, it basically increases your expected value exponentially. As soon as you're getting place money at an inflated odd, basically rewarding you for putting on the outright. The bookmakers are giving you a much inflated price compared to what you're getting for a normal, say, top 5, top 10. 8 places can be a bit of a tricky one this year in particular. Some of the books, which I won't name, but some of them have really dropped down their odds when it comes to 8 places versus 5. So you can take a pretty big hit on the win odds. So you do need to shop your odds, I'd say, would be the key thing. But in general, yes, I play each way bets almost exclusively. Really do recommend taking that route. I think it does give you a massive edge, especially in terms of the boost on the places, and that keeps the cash flow ticking over while you're waiting for those outright hits. And especially in a year like this where the Scotty Scheffler's winning or some outrageous guy at 300 to 1 who hasn't made a cut in like his last 5 tournaments. And that's kind of felt like how the start of 2024 has been so far. So if you're at least cashing some of those places, that keeps the money and the cash flow coming in while you're waiting to hit another big winner.
Sia, number 1 ranked player in this field in proximity from beyond 200 yards over the past 12 rounds. Can you name him?
Geez, I would have thought it would have been Tom Hoagie. I know David said he was in the 2 or 3 range, but let me take another stab at it. I mean, Kevin Yu's got to be up there.
Number 1.
Looking at, is he number 1?
Number 1, tied with Patrick Fishburne of all people.
Fishburne, poor Patrick Fishburne. He had his win last week, Pat.
He had it, and then he clutched it away. He was playing so well too, and then the moment that they took the lead, it was over for him.
Yeah. That was, I mean, that was probably inevitable with Rory and Shane Lowry knocking on the door there.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, but if they had just parred 17, you make your easy birdie on 18, and then you're off to the races. Then there's not even a playoff, and you end up winning by 1. But Dave, you still got a gold pick to give us? Hit me.
I do, and yeah, I'm going to go the top 20 market as well with a European, Alexander Noren. Look, he's got a fantastic record in Texas. He really loves it in Texas. He's done it in multiple different courses. The weather in particular, I think, is very appealing for Noren. He does tend to play very well in the wind. We've seen that in multiple tournaments previously, both at the PGA Tour level, but also the DP World Tour. It does look like there's some volatile wind this week in particular, a bit of thunderstorms, a bit of rain as well. And I think that Noren's got the skills to handle all of that. Excellent over 200 yards. The short game acumen, I think, is going to be a real benefit if that weather does become a factor. These players are going to be missing greens. I've got a lot of confidence in terms of getting up and down. Look, he's coming in here in really hot form, 5 consecutive top 20s, and he's played here twice, and he finished 21st and 12th in his only 2 starts. So when I'm looking at a player at the top of the board, that's kind of everything that I'm wanting. I'm wanting someone who's an excellent course fit, who can handle whatever the weather's going to be that week. He's got great course history and great performances at correlated courses as well. So Noren really ticks all the boxes for me, and you get him at plus 150 at Bet365 for a top 20. For a guy who's just finished in the top 20 for his last 5 consecutive starts, to still be getting plus money on a top 20 seems very, very generous for someone who absolutely loves Texas.
Noren's interesting because I absolutely despise his outright odds, Sia. But in this market, he's kind of like the mid-tier Xander Schauffele when it comes to the top 10 and top 20 markets right now, where he just seems like a lock to finish there, yet somehow not sniff a win.
I agree. I mean, he's certainly not somebody. I mean, when you look at his finishing positions and the metrics behind them, I mean, he's doing it in such a sustainable way, obviously. I know that's a word we just kind of throw around a lot, but I mean, literally checking every box off the tee, around the green, putting, approach, all of that. And what's so interesting about this tournament is we're starting to realize that we might have some weather issues here. And going into this tournament, a couple days ago when I started my research, I really minimized around the green play. And I wonder if I need to maybe put a little bit more of a weight on that with potentially some more missed greens, some like a lack of greens in regulation relative to what the expectation is. So I do think Alex Noren kind of fits the mold regardless of what the weather patterns are. And I got to say, like, I don't think I'm not betting Alex Noren outright. But I do think Noren in the top 20, that type of market is a perfect market for Alex Noren.
You mentioned the weather, so we should probably talk about it. We're still a bit too far out to make any sort of concrete judgments. Hell, even when the tournament starts, we're probably still too far out to make any concrete judgments about how the forecast is going to go. But right now, from what I'm using, and I'm using the McKinney Texas Wind Finder to take a look at Thursday through Sunday, and the weekend looks absolutely horrible. Even if they get pushed into Monday, it's not going to look great. But it looks like there's a ton of rain coming on Sunday at the moment. There also looks to be a lot of rain overnight, Thursday into Friday morning. So there could be tee times pushed back. And even early on Thursday, there could be rain as well. It doesn't seem like it's going to be all that much to delay play. And if it does get delayed, it probably won't be delayed that much as of right now, based on what I'm seeing on Thursday. But weirdly enough, Saturday looks like the best day. But all of the craziness in the forecast in terms of wind, Dave, looks like it's not going to come until Friday, and Thursday looks like it's a bit windy, a constant of like 10 to 12 miles per hour with gusts maybe up to 20 at some points, but generally in those mid-teens. That looks like the best that we're going to get this week. So does that really change your capping of this tournament? If you knew that that's what it was going to be, you look at it on Thursday morning when you wake up in future time, and you still have 3 hours to go before this tournament starts, and that's what the forecast is telling you. Does it change your perspective on who you want to take this week?
It does a little bit, yeah, absolutely. I find with weather that when there is weather in play, books are just so slow to react to it. Honestly, it is one of the easiest ways to get an edge over the bookmakers is to really nail in on the weather forecast, and we will delay our selections a little bit going into a tournament if we do see some volatile weather, just to give us the best opportunity to really take advantage of any waves that might develop as a result of that, especially in a full field event where there is going to be some big disparity between when those tee times are. I'm seeing thunderstorms throughout the whole week as a chance. So I almost wanted to make my goal bet that this would not be a full tournament. That'll be a 54-hole tournament if this weather forecast stays as it's currently forecast. But yeah, we'll see in the next 24 to 48 hours where it really settles down. At the moment, it's kind of looking like a Thursday PM, Friday AM might get a bit of an edge, but look, it's going to be really volatile whichever way it goes. And yeah, the wind gusts I see sort of getting up to that 25 to 30 kind of mark at stages as well with gusts, which is significant enough at a pretty exposed golf course.
So did you donate a lot off the hop, Sia, or were you waiting to see what the weather would actually tell us?
I didn't donate a lot off the hop. The only bet I made off the hop, and I actually tweeted this out, and it's funny because I got a response from our friend, everybody's friend here, Jeff Feinberg, who was like, he's on my wheel of losers. But the bet I made right away was Thomas Dietrich at 45-1. And that was just because when I was doing my preliminary research, I was like, all right, this guy, the way he's putting, the way the approach play can look, the long iron play, all of those things, the scoring, it really looks good for him. And we've seen Thomas Dietrich in 2024 compete in at least 2 tournaments where he probably could have won them. So with that in mind, that was the only thing I made right away.
Do you have any hot takes on Dietrich, Dave? Because it feels like he's just never going to win.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of what I do, I originally grew up following and working a few DP World Tour tournaments where I grew up in Dubai. And so I kind of feel like DP World Tour has been my natural home, and I've had to progress into PGA Tour as my journey in the golf industry is carried on. And yeah, Dietrich has been incredibly frustrating because you think of how close he's come to winning some of these PGA Tour tournaments, let alone those DP World Tour tournaments where those fields are a lot weaker. And you can see the clear, evident class of this player against the rest of the field and just consistently never been able to get across the line. Had the same situation with him very recently at the Corrales Punta Cana last year, where he managed to throw away victory, finished 8th, looked like it was his prime opportunity, and just absolutely crumbled on the Sunday, which has become the recipe for him. So he's a model darling for me. He's always going to rate really well. He's always going to look like a really good bet at pretty much any number. And yeah, I'll probably fall for it again and again because he does rate out so well. I think it's really difficult to win a golf tournament. It's really difficult, and we do perhaps put too much pressure on these guys and our expectations. We get burned too much and form these sort of preconceived ideas. But it does seem like with Dietrich that particularly his performance on Sundays when he is in contention has always left a little bit lacking.
Hey, look, maybe he just needs to find the right partner in a team format, Sia, because Lowry keeps not getting it done on Sunday. Then all of a sudden you pair him with Rory, he's a winner again.
Well, that's right. And Dietrich with McIntyre last week was pretty good. I mean, that was a T8 finish, and they were cruising into Sunday, you know, probably with their sights on a T5 finish. So again, this is one of those watered down tournaments. Like if you look at the top, and you know, I don't know if any of our gold picks are going to concern like Jordan Spieth or Jason Day or Will Zalatoris or Tom Kim, but I'm not saying they're not rightfully at the top of the board, but this is not a tournament with Scotty Scheffler, and it's really not a tournament with people like Xander or Patrick Cantlay where we really have to worry about one of these top guys definitely putting their stamp on the tournament. I think it leaves room for guys like Thomas Dietrich or guys we're going to bring up later on in the show that can actually kind of go into this tournament or even go into Sunday not feeling particularly intimidated for one of two reasons. One is because those guys that I mentioned that are at the top of the board aren't actually there on Sunday, and two, if they are there, I just don't think they operate in a way that is going to be intimidating to the likes of a Thomas Dietrich.
As I've told you before, use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now if you want to get a deposit match of up to $100. So deposit 100, get 100, already doubling your money. So big winner right there. So hopefully we can chuck onto that this week with a Thursday entry, a 2-banger, pays 3-1. Jordan Spieth higher than 67 strokes. So if he goes to 66, that means he has to be 5 under for the day. We've seen Spieth just blow up enough. It does worry me a little bit that it's in Texas, but we did talk about the weather with Sia and David, that maybe it's not as wet as we think, but a little bit windier, and just Spieth's going to make a double bogey somewhere on this course, and if he does that, it's going to be hard to shoot 5 under for the day. So we'll take higher on 67 strokes for him, and I'll go higher on Will Zalatoris, who I like him at harder courses. At a birdie fest, can he catch lightning in a bottle on the greens? Yeah, of course that he can. And he can have one of these super low rounds, especially with his proximity from beyond 200 yards and the way that he can beat up on par 5s and even the shorter par 4s. But we've just seen it enough times that if he isn't completely clicking with his irons and giving himself enough chances inside of 10 feet, then he's just not going to make enough birdies in order to breach 67.5 strokes. So we'll take higher on Will Zalatoris, 67.5 strokes, higher on Jordan Spieth, 67 strokes, and boom, hopefully we can double your money with the match deposit and then triple your money again with a winner on Thursday and continue to roll that forward. Again, the Pat Mayo Classic is open as of the tee time release Tuesday afternoon, so go in and get your drafts going because it fills up very quickly. Okay, back to the show. The Pat Mayo Experience is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes you need to get something off your chest. Lord knows I do. And one of the biggest things that can cause is big stressors in our life. Whether they're big or they're small, bottling it all up can really start to affect us very negatively. And therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. And it's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries and really start to affect your life in a positive way. And it might even be some stuff that you're not even really thinking about that you can unlock and really start to improve your life for the better. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if you're not liking it. So, get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/PatMayo today and get 10% off your first month. That's better, help. HELP.com/Pat Mayo. Let's move to the silver selections for the week. I originally had Andrew Novak in this spot. You know, this is a Novak Nation type of show, top 30, plus 230. I mean, I'll probably still end up betting that anyway, but I did want to include LIV into this a little bit, where I've done more research on LIV than I think that I haven't done so much in the past. That in Singapore, it's actually a course where we do have some data points because it's hosted the Asian Tour and DP World Tour since 2005, and Sergio just kind of cleans up at this track. He won it in 2018. He was 4th, I believe, or 8th, sorry, in 2019. He was 11th in 2017. He lost in a playoff to Taylor Gooch in the first round of LIV a year ago. He's plus 160 to come inside the top 10 at LIV Singapore, Sia. I don't know how much LIV research you did, but this is a really cool course to look at optically. I don't know how much of the tournament I'm actually going to watch, but it is very visually striking.
You know what? I haven't done any research on LIV, really in general, to be honest with you. And I haven't watched much of it, partly because I don't know how to watch much of it. YouTube. I will say this, though. Is it YouTube still? I mean, okay, because I thought they changed that, and I wasn't 100% sure. Is it still YouTube? Like,
for in Canada, it is. I think worldwide it is. Maybe it's not in America. Maybe you need to have the CW to watch it in America, which, sure. But yeah, I can just like scroll YouTube and just chuck it on in the background.
Yeah, I think in America it's different, to be honest. I think it used to be YouTube and now it's something else. With that said, I do know Sergio's been playing like pretty well lately. I mean, I know he was a pick for some people a couple of weeks ago, not at Adelaide, but maybe the event before that. So listen, I don't have any input when it comes to that, but Sergio certainly sounds good to me. What was that number you had on him?
Plus 160 to come inside the top 10. He's 20-1 to win, but I bet Cam Smith to win, just because Sergio continues to not get it done. He lost to Burmeister at Doral in the playoff. He had like a decent day one at the Masters, then completely imploded when everyone else did on the Friday. Not a great week in Adelaide last week, but this course, Dave, just seems to be something that fits his eye. And sometimes guys continuously go back to a course, and he's the one who has the most experience at the Singapore course. You must be pretty familiar with the course, though, from the Asian Tour and DP World Tour days, though.
Yeah, Laguna National. I mean, you're right in saying that one of the very few courses that we get on LIV that we've actually had high-profile professional golf tournaments at before, which is actually really helpful if you are handicapping LIV. I mean, unfortunately for me, LIV golf is still catching up in terms when it comes to data. That's really the big issue when it comes to betting. I use a lot of strokes gained in my analysis. I mean, let's put it this way. LIV Golf didn't have a leaderboard on their website when they launched their first tournament. They completely forgot that having a leaderboard was a good idea for a golf tournament, so we knew who was winning. So we've started to get some like greens of regulation and stuff like that, but strokes gain looks like it's still coming. And by the time that strokes gain's here, it's probably merged with the PGA Tour, and LIV Golf doesn't exist anymore, and it's all just one big conglomerate from then on. So yeah, look, I do really like that Sergio Garcia play, though. I think that's pretty sharp. It is a good spot for him. I mean, we look at the LIV Golf field, right? Top 10. You do have to take into account there's a lot of players in that field that just are not going to be in the top 10 whatsoever. So I do like that number. I think that's a sharp play.
Yeah, I was going to do Scott Vincent top 20 at 2-1, but I know his hair might get in his eyes, and that might not work out too well. He was top 5 at this venue last year, and it seems to be a place where he's played really well throughout time. That's always something that I always wonder about, because they're traveling around the world, Dave, that the guys that have had a lot of experience on the Asian Tour, you do see them pop up in the Asian swing during LIV. And I mean, we've even seen that time over time on the DP World Tour as well, although this is the first like really enhanced Asian swing that they've been doing in a while, where they go in Japan and then China. That is there something about these courses, something about these greens, something about the layout that's just strikingly different than what they would see mainly in Europe or South Africa or Dubai? Like, what sets these courses apart, do you think?
I'd say a couple of things. The grass types, for a starter, you get these like really kind of sticky either zoysia grasses or paspalum or different grass types in those Asian countries. Often there's There's ocean nearby as well, where Paspalum's like a really sturdy grass, can survive. It's got a very high salt tolerance, and so it's much better in those coastal regions as well. It's also just extremely hot and humid in the majority of those countries. It's very tropical, so you get the like no matter what, it's very difficult to kind of dry out those greens. It becomes very moist basically, and they tend to play a little bit slower and a bit softer as well. So yeah, there's a couple of conditions things, and just the factors you mentioned of traveling kind of some of these long distances. But I think that's the biggest strength actually with LIV, and that's something that they should be leaning into a bit more. I think that when they try and compete with the PGA Tour on PGA Tour's home stomping ground in the States, they really struggle, especially the fact that they haven't got some of these iconic golf courses that the PGA Tour has. I mean, there's very few names in the world of golf that actually move the needle for the general public. But there are golf courses that do, places like Pebble Beach and Torrey Pines, where the armchair fan will come back and watch, and they don't actually necessarily mind who's winning. They want to see that iconic golf course. And I think that's a bit of a struggle for LIV, particularly in the States. But looking at these places like Australia, where they've got a huge following, they're really starved of content for really high class professional golf. That's something that LIV should really be leaning into, making sure that they're hitting all of those spots where they're not getting that same sort of coverage for the golf tournament. So I think that's where LIV Golf could potentially lean. And hey, who knows, maybe we get LIV New Zealand sometime and you get to see some top class professionals down here. Although where I live, Paraparaumu, we actually had the New Zealand Open here, and that was the one year where Steve Williams managed to convince Tiger Woods to come down and play at my local here in New Zealand at the New Zealand Open, which he of course won and trounced the field. But there was a deal with Steve Williams that he was going to stay on Tiger Woods' bag as long as he came and played the New Zealand Open at least once.
Are you surprised that LIV didn't end up making a New Zealand stop? Because I was shocked they didn't end up doing like 2 or 3 Australian stops. That it does seem to be in your neck of the world that they are starting for like the top end golfers to come down, because golf does seem to be incredibly popular. That it just seemed very logical to me, if they're going to do LIV Adelaide, you might as well do LIV New Zealand, since you have all your stuff down there anyway. It seems like it'd be very expensive to ship all this stuff, all the equipment, get the golfers down there, that if you're going to be in that part of the world, you might as well capitalize on it.
Yeah, for sure. I hope it's something that they consider in the future. I think it'd be a great option for them. I mean, I think already they must be considering an extra event in Australia, and that's an absolute no-brainer, especially if they could get an iconic course like Victoria Golf Club or Royal Melbourne. Something in the Melbourne Sandbar region would be really cool, and get a high-class golf tournament down there, and then add in something in New Zealand as well. Because, yeah, as you said, I mean, look, we've got to think of new ways to be sustainable, especially with sending these golfers around the world who are getting paid millions of dollars. And if we can limit some of that travel time and be a bit more smart at how we're scheduling these tournaments, get into January, February, and when our summer's sort of coming into form, and play some of these golf courses down here in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, in New Zealand, we've got more the highest number of golf courses per capita of anywhere in the world. So there's plenty of options of really high class golf courses where they could come and play. And I think it would be a fantastic option for them to consider. But yeah, look, untouched market that they could really tap into. And I think that's the only way that I'd see LIV sort of being commercially successful in the long term.
So Sergio top 10 plus 160 is my silver pick. Sia, what is yours?
Well, I kind of teased it already. I mean, it was going to be, I'll say this, it was going to be Adam Schenk top 30 at plus 110. I actually changed it before we went on to Thomas Dietrich at plus 115. I partly changed it, well, for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to have a Tom Dietrich pick since I had him as an outright, but 2, because I felt kind of egged on by Feinberg, who was like, he's on my wheel of losers. I can't wait to see how Pat reacts to it. And again, I think this is a good course fit for Thomas Dietrich for all the reasons I said earlier, namely driving distance, the ability to birdie or better, certainly there. The long iron play pretty good as well. I love what he's doing with the putter. Ball striking could be better, but all in all, I think a top 30 is a very comfortable play at plus 115 for Thomas Dietrich.
All right, so Dietrich plus 115. If you go to Fantasy National right now, that's where I'm getting all my numbers from. FantasyNational.com/Mayo gets you access to the new leaderboard app, which is the only leaderboard app you're probably ever going to want to use. It's much better than the PGA Tours app, I'll tell you that much right now. And if you have iOS or Android, you can pick that up, or you can go in and use some of our new filters. And I sorted by Texas. Only the state of Texas rounds, and to kind of back up your point from earlier, Dave, about Alex Noren. Over the past 24 rounds, The top 10 players in the field in strokes gained total in Texas are Jordan Spieth, number 1, Alex Noren, number 2, Matt Kuchar, Mac Hughes, Kim, Steven Yeager, Sam Stevens, Daniel Berger, Adam Scott, and Aaron Rye factor into the top of the list. Do you put any context into where everything is going on? Like, do you think that a California history or a Florida history or a Texas history and performing well over and over in certain locations does lead you down the right path, or do you think it's a bit noisy?
Yeah, I do think it's an interesting way that you can look at it. I mean, we want golfers who've got to be comfortable with their climbs and where they're located, especially guys who've got links to Texas. I mean, look, the Valero Texas Open, for example, has just got such history and legacy in the game. It's been running for over 100 years, and you find those guys who've got a lot of pride when it comes to that state as well. So I do think there's some pretty strong links, and more than anything, I would just say that you tend to get the same sort of putting surfaces, you tend to get the same sort of weather. It's a place that they're comfortable with, and all of that can make the difference in a game that can be separated by inches at times.
Do you have a silver pick? I'm sure you do.
I do indeed, yeah. And so I'm going to take on the defending champ in a matchup here. I'm going to take Benny Arn over Jason Day at +100 on DraftKings. Look, probably a little bit brave taking on a defending champ, but Jason Day doesn't look to be in the best of touch. He's lost on approach for 5 straight now. So that's a slight concern for him. And outside that win, I mean, he finished 54th and missed the cut here. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily the greatest fit on planet Earth for Jason Day. And Benny Arn's just been a different beast in 2024. We've seen him elevate his game to such a high level. The approach play is excellent. He really excels over 200 plus yards, which is a key metric for me this week. And he's played here once and finished 14th. So happy to get plus money on Benny Arn over Jason Day there.
So I was looking at the Jason Day markets because I'm kind of with you, which is going to make a really interesting conversation I'm going to have with Tambo on the DraftKings show tomorrow, Sia, about, because I don't think anyone's going to play Jason Day. I mean, why would you? I mean, David just kind of laid it out. He's lost on approach in 5 straight. Yes, he's the defending champion, but he was in much better form this time last year. It just seemed like he was peaking towards a win, and then he finally got it, and then he kind of fell off of a cliff until now. So I was looking at just overall. On Bet365, you can go in, and, you know, you can play the make the cut market. What are they going to come? What's the top Australian market? Or you can just go finishing position. 29th or worse is -120. So you don't even need him to miss the cut. I mean, you could bet him to miss the cut at +240, which doesn't actually seem like that bad of a bet to me. But Day over under 28.5 place in this tournament. Sia, what do you think?
I'm pretty shocked that number is -120. I mean, again, to your point, you'd think the defending champion would be a different number. Listen, I'm not investing in Jason Day, but as the defending, like, listen, I mean, he hasn't been horrible. The approach play has been bad. The off the tee game has been a little checkered, but he's been really hot with the putter. And anytime somebody's really hot with the putter on a very consistent basis, I mean, I'm looking at it now. We're talking about 5 in a row and like appreciable gains on each one. I mean, if I had to bet that, I would say he'd probably finish inside the top 29, but he's certainly not somebody that I plan on. I'm not necessarily going to target him in matchups, but he's certainly not somebody I'm planning on playing in DFS or playing in the finishing position market.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting because you have to most people just kind of listen. I'm guilty of this as well sometimes, just looking at the outright market and moving on from that. But if it's going to be 28.5 as his finishing position, if you wanted to bet him, let's say top 30, it's -115. So you're probably not best playing him under 28.5. You can get an extra place and a half in terms of the leaderboard, and you actually pay less vig on the bet. So trying to compare markets, even on the same site, telling you the same thing is always going to be essential in looking for this and just saving yourself 10 cents on every dollar here, every dollar there. That stuff is going to add up over time. So always scan the markets looking for those things. Bronze picks. Sia, I'll let you lead off on the bronze.
Yeah, so I waffled on this one too, and I just want to put out full disclosure. I had one pick and then I changed it, but the reason I'm even bringing it up is because the pick that I was going to have involves Ben On. The thing that really frightens me about Ben On is the putter, and again, I'm not a guy that really emphasizes the putter tournament to tournament, but in this tournament with a lot of scoring probably involved here, at least that's what we think. the putter is certainly something that I'm taking an extra look at. I was going to come with my bronze pick as Ben on plus 170 in a tournament 3-ball over Sung J M and Tom Kim. I still might bet that. However, my bronze pick, I like this a little bit better, and it makes sense, right? Because this one's going to be minus 120. Tom Kim minus 120 over Sung J M. And this is more of a fading Sung J M than it is a pro Tom Kim sentiment pick here, but Tom Kim is rounding into form. At least it looks like a little bit, certainly relative to where he was 1 or 2 months ago. And what I'm looking at from Sung J M, other than the fact that he hasn't actually played at TPC Craig Ranch, where Tom Kim has over the last 2 years with, I believe, a 34th and a 17th place finish. Sung J, like, the approach play isn't there. And with Tom Kim, like, we can see him start to come into form, but I don't think Sung J is going to have a very good tournament. So again, this is more of a fade of Sung J M, more than, again, a play on Tom Kim. But I think minus 120 is a very good number.
How do you feel about Sung J and Tom Kim really right now, David? Because we saw Tom Kim return from whatever injury he had at the Players. He gained strokes on approach, actually a bunch at the RBC Heritage, but lost a ton off the tee, which is really odd for him. Maybe it was going up against the very best players, but you think on an accuracy-driven course that Tom Kim would have actually gained a bunch of strokes, where when you take a look at the numbers from the Heritage for Sung J, it was the exact opposite. He kind of gained everywhere outside of approach, which has really been his Achilles heel. We just spoke about Day, how he's been losing on approach. Sung J is no different. Basically outside of Century so far to kick off the year, Sung J's been pretty poor with his iron play.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because at the Century it looks awesome. Like, he played great at Plantation at the beginning of the year, and then just absolutely fell off a cliff after that. And yeah, it's pretty concerning what we're seeing from Sanjay at the moment. It's not necessarily what we'd expect from him. We know that he's got oodles of talent. I mean, the main thing that surprised me with Sanjay is just how young he is. Like, that still surprises me to this day, because he burst on the scene with obviously the performance at the Masters particularly was pretty iconic for him. But the guy's only 26. Like, I mean, it just feels like Sanjay's like at least 33. Do you know what I mean? And so he's incredibly young. Still got plenty of time ahead of him, but not what we've really wanted to see from him. I really like this matchup that Sia's come out with. I think Tom Kim's starting to round into a bit of form. I did have some pretty deep concerns with Tom Kim, not going to lie. Earlier this year, he looked like he'd started the year, and the main thing that was concerning is he completely lost his putter, and for him, that's such a fundamental part of his game, is his ability to just drain putts from any which corner of the green, right? So he went from a year where he was sort of consistently gaining 4 or 5 strokes putting to losing with the putter very, very consistently for the first 3 months. And I put out on my Twitter, I sort of did a poll of whether we thought Tom Kim's putter was completely broken or not. Just quietly, because nobody seemed to be talking about it, and it looks like he's maybe started to turn the corner. I mean, out of his last 7 tournaments, he's gained putting in 4 of them, and then most recently the RBC Heritage, he had a very good putting week. What I would say, I guess, with the RBC Heritage, just as like a devil's advocate, is that they're very small greens, so you haven't got too much like scope in terms of like having to make some really big putts, and that might test it again a little bit. But yeah, look, I think that it's a better fit for him perhaps than Sung J M. Driver gets taken a little bit out of your hand at TPC Craig Ranch. We all know what an asset that is for Sung J M's game, being both long and accurate off the tee. And for Tom Kim, that putter and approach play looks to be really good of late.
Okay, bronze pick from you, David.
Yeah, so I mean, look, a golfer that we've actually already talked about, Tom Hoge, for me in a matchup over Stephen Jaeger. So a bit brave with my last pick, taking Benny Yarn over Jason Day, although we didn't mention that the Melbourne pants for Jason Day are really going to weigh him down if any rain comes in. Those massive pants will hold him back for sure. So I've got that going for me. But now a little bit brave, taking Tom Hoge over Stephen Jaeger, the only guy to beat Scotty Scheffler in the last 5 tournaments. What I would say with it is that the driver is mitigated a little bit of this venue. I think that's a huge strength when it comes to Stephen Jaeger. That gets taken out of hand a little bit. And Tom Hoge, as I've mentioned previously already on this show, is really striping on approach. Jaeger's obviously had that emotional victory recently. Is he going to be able to sustain that momentum, or is that kind of a reassessment point of what his next goals are in terms of his progression on the PGA Tour? Whereas Tom Hoge, I think, is really hungry to go out there and get that win. So quite happy to take Tom Hoge over Stephen Jaeger there.
Okay, so my bronze pick, I'm going to the very bottom of this, and I did bet this guy outright with the 8 placement points, but I think that the top 40 market is probably the better, or even if you can find a make the cut market, although he might be too far down the board to actually be listed in the to make the cut market. But I've been tracking it for a while now, and Lonto Griffin's ball striking has actually been very, very good over the past 6 weeks or so, and the putter has not cooperated whatsoever. The chipping also a real problem. He finally did crack the top 40 marker in in Dominican Republic 2 weeks ago. He ended up coming T36 after shooting 1 over in the first round, then rallied back over the next 3 days. But take a look at what he's done in the Byron Nelson in the past at this course. He's only played it the one time. He was T51, but he did gain strokes on the green. Now, he hasn't gained strokes putting since. Let's take a look at this here. The Farmers in February, so that's bad news. But the ball striking, especially the approach play, is ticking up. He's gained over 4 strokes on approach in 3 of his past 4. He's gaining off the tee. If he can keep that going and just break even with the field in terms of the putter. And this is a guy who used to be really good on the greens. And all of a sudden, it just kind of flicked. It's almost like you mentioned with Sungjae, where he was consistently gaining on the greens, and then something happened, and all of a sudden he was just in a rut. Hopefully he can pull himself out of it this week. And even if he doesn't, if the ball striking keeps up, I think that Lonto can be relatively competitive here in the ball striking market and finish top 15 in the field with that. If he can do that, I think he can come top 40 on the leaderboard, and you can get that for a handy price, ties included, with plus 210. Did you think he would hear the name Lonto Griffin, Sia?
I didn't. I don't hate it. I look at the stat profile and I feel like, maybe this is a bad comp, but like a poor man's Keith Mitchell, like getting it done with the ball striking, but can be a complete disaster with the short game. I don't hate it. Again, I think this is a tournament where you're looking for scoring, where I do fear the putter, but listen, there are going to be times where he's only going to lose moderately with the putter. And given how the ball striking looks, I totally get it. I think there's a lot of fun guys down the board that really could do well here, and I think Lonto Griffin's certainly one of them.
Did you have any takes on Lonto Griffin, or is he just a complete crossout for you, Dave?
No, I think that's a really interesting market to have a look at, especially at the number. I probably prefer him in the make-miss cut market, just given the weather and there'd be a bit of volatility. But look, I think that you're perhaps onto something there, Pat. Look, he's really gaining on approach of late. Looks to have turned a real corner there. We all know that tends to be a bit more consistent, a bit more sticky for players, that when they find something with their long game, tends to stick around for a little bit longer. And yeah, look, he's played here once and gained strokes putting back in 2022. So he did at least like the greens, the one fun that he has played here. So yeah, look, I think that you're potentially onto something, especially I think that's a very generous number for the top 40. It's a nice find.
Well, let's talk about outrights. I'll have my final bets in the newsletter, which you can subscribe to for free down in the description right now, or on the Mayo Media Substack on Wednesday evening. I'll talk them through with Tambo on Wednesday's show, but I want to get a sense of where you guys are at. So is it just Dietrich for you, Sia, right now?
It is right now, but I am going to probably pick up on that Tom Hoge number at 33, or even if I get it at 30, honestly, even at 28-1, I think that's reasonable. I'm speaking for other people who might not have the 33-1 market. I am definitely going to be only betting, though. This is going to be one of those tournaments where I'm not really going to be taking a favorite. So I'm going to be speculating in that 25 to 50-1 market. Adam Schenk was one of those guys when he was at 55-1. I was going to consider that. Now that he's sort of been bet down, I feel like I missed the number. And frankly, I don't think he's going to win the tournament. I think Keith Mitchell and Tom Hoge are probably going, even though Keith Mitchell can have some issues with the putter, I think it's probably going to be a shorter card. I'll probably have some live bets in play, but I would say by the end of the day, or like after this show, it's going to be just 3. It's going to be Tom Hoge, Keith Mitchell, and Thomas Dietrich.
I actually did bet Adam Schenk at 55-1. Feinberg sold me on that on the Monday show. So he is like the lowest odds of anyone on my card right now, because I don't know what to do at the top. And I don't know if I do want to take that plunge on Hoge, even if it is 30. It seems pretty steep for Tom Hoge, for a guy who has one career win and just consistently blows it anytime that he gets in contention. David, where are you looking with your outright so far?
Yeah, so I really like Tom Hoagie. I've got him at 33s with 8 places, but you can get him at Bet365 with 5 places at 33s as well. So I think he's a good option. I think that he has got a chance here to really stamp his mark on what he's been doing in the game recently. And another player I've already mentioned, Alex Noren. I've got him at 23s again with 8 places to win here. Obviously, the Texas form is just awesome for Alex Noren. I think this is a golf course that's really going to fit, and the weather's actually really what appeals for me as well. I think that adds an extra element to his game that he can really excel at the top of the market here.
All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo experience. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy will get you a deposit match of up to $100, and you have the play that we have earlier in the show, and you'll have the one that you have in the newsletter. And I think Kenny and Byron gave one out as well on the Fantasy Golf Degenerate show. So, David, what do you have for content this week? And tell everyone where both they can find your content and where they can find you.
Yeah, so busy week. I'm in covering the Volvo China Open and the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, probably the worst named tournament that's ever existed,
Yes.
but here we are. And so, yeah, look, I'll be covering both of those tournaments this week over at Win Daily Sports. You can find me on Twitter at Deep Dive Golf. We've got some great promos out at the moment in terms of our profit loss. It's been pretty awesome the last few years. So just come over, have a look, see what we're all about. We'd love to have some more people in the community because, yeah, we've got a great base over there, and it's a lot of fun.
Sia, same thing for you. Where can they find you, and what are you doing this week?
Yeah, you can find me at Win Daily Sports as well. Me and David usually in the Discord before the tournament, talking about some DFS plays and of course some betting plays. But also, of course, on Sportsline, I'm hosting the Early Edge every single morning. That's on the Sportsline YouTube channel every single morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, if you're in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, you can find me on Monumental Sports Network on a show called By the Book, where me and Meg McDonald have a sports betting show. So that's fun as well. But honestly, the best way to find me, just follow me on Twitter at Sia Nejad.
That will do it for me at the PME on Twitter, fantasynational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off all the stats, all the tools, all the sims, plus the brand new leaderboard app, which is just included in the membership. So go get that right now. If you haven't got it, code Mayo at Underdog, and the newsletter, completely free. Smash the like and sub to the channel while you're here as well. I will see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!